I know that, Mark, you were a gang member. You carried a knife. You went to prison for carrying a knife. What is the message that you think you can get across to young people that clearly they've been deaf to so far, considering that those extraordinary figures of, what is it, 20,000 knife crimes?
Yeah, so I guess when I'm speaking to young people in schools and young people in young detention centres that have been actually sentenced for carrying knives and other offensive weapons, is that the world is a much better, safer place if you don't pick up a knife. I think one of the things that we need to look at is why they're picking up knives. A lot of them are picking up knives because they're scared. They're hearing about other people carrying knives and things like that, and then that's why they're picking up knives. I mean, the reason why I carried a knife as a youngster when I first got involved in gangs and things like that was because I was scared and I wanted to protect myself. The reason why I ended up in a gang is because my home life wasn't very well, and it was a lot easier for me to spend more times on the streets than it was at home. So that's why I was in a gang.
So, Mark, a lot of people would say we shouldn't be soft-soaping like this. We should be putting every young person with a knife in jail. What would that do, though, to the life chances of those young people as opposed to your kind of interventions?
Well, like you say, when you get a criminal record, it just makes it a lot harder for you in life to become someone or make something of yourself. And I think one of the things that we miss a lot is when I was young and I was getting involved in what I was getting involved in, nobody was looking at the reasons why and the reasons behind it. And like I said, the reason why I spent a lot of time on the streets and ended up going into gangs and ended up getting groomed into gangs was because my home life wasn't the best, you know, and I'd rather be on the streets than I would rather be at home, and people seeing that and took advantage of that. And as you say, your life is a lot harder if you do actually get a criminal offence. People don't want to employ you. People look down on you, and you begin to believe that you're not worth anything. And I think that's a major part of it. And obviously, I've got the scars to tell that I can show the kids and stuff like that when I go to schools. I lost my left eye from a knife crime. I was stabbed in the face and the neck, you know. So the repercussions of all this are real, and the kids need to realise that they could have consequences for their actions. And just by carrying a knife to protect themselves, they could quite easily be stabbed with it themselves.
Yeah, and obviously they're going to listen to you, whereas, as we've been saying on the programme this morning, they're not necessarily going to listen to a policeman or a clergyman, and in many cases, unfortunately, not to their parents either. What can you... I mean, you can show yourself, you can talk about your personal story, but what do you think you can say to actually persuade them that carrying a knife, which they think initially may be just for their own protection, can lead to a point where they're actually going to want to use that knife and eventually be themselves a victim of a knife crime? What do you actually say to them to get them to drop this idea of carrying a knife?
So, like I say, I show them the implications of what a knife can actually do when I take my eye out, and I show them and I hold it in front of them. I say, this is what happens to people who are victims of knives, but it can quite easily be you just by carrying a knife, because ultimately nobody's trained to carry a knife unless that's your profession, you know. And I guess it's just getting them to understand and see the implications of that it can affect them for the rest of their lives. But not only them, it can affect the people around them as well.
Yeah,
and Mark, so it's International Men's Day today, November the 19th. I was an ambassador for International Men's Day for many years. I did a lot of work with gang members. About 95% of gang members grew up in a household without a father or a positive male role model. I want to talk to you to try and shift this conversation away from toxic masculinity to having more positive male role models in young people's lives. And I guess that's the kind of role that you're filling in a funny sort of sense. You're a reformed criminal, but you're a positive, get out of this mess role model. Now, isn't that what young people need?
Yeah, most definitely. And like you say, yeah, I'm a reformed gang member, but ultimately before that, I was a scared child, and I was a child that grew up in a home who, yeah, had a loving mother, but never knew my dad. And the father figure that was brought into my life was an abusive man. So like I say, so that was my role model. So the people that I received positive love.
Oh, we've lost the line.
It was just getting onto the real, juice with there.
Just indeed, because what I wanted to know was how he gauged the result of what he talks to these young people, the kind of success that he has in actually getting them to not carry knives.
But also, so much of this issue is about wanting to belong.
We've got him back.
Great.
We've got him back. Mark, sorry, we lost you there.
Yeah.
I'm desperate to know. I'm desperate to know what sort of reaction you get from these young people. Do you believe you are getting through to them and really making a difference?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, like, for example, we don't just go into schools and colleges and speak to children. We also have crisis placements where we house children that are running from gangs and stuff like that. We have a 24-hour helpline on our website. Most recently, we had a young member who phoned it up, who had been kidnapped for a week and managed to get hold of a phone and phone our free phone number. We managed to find out where he was and get him rescued by the police. And I just feel like... sadly, the police are not looked at in a good light from the children that are hanging around on the streets and stuff like that. So it's good that there's a service like ours that they can trust. And I think a big part of it is because they know that we've been through what they're going through and we understand what they're going through. Because it's not as simple as that. It's just a bad kid carrying a knife. As I say, there's no such thing as bad kids. It's just children making bad choices.
And it's true to say, isn't it, that boys who hurt other boys or hurt themselves, we see with like male suicide and things like that. But so much of this, Mark, is about enabling these young boys to admit their vulnerability, to enabling them to admit that they're scared. How do you do that when it's all about being tough and street and showing respect? How do you get them to open up? And what can we learn from that?
Yeah. So, as I say, when I go to schools and colleges and so forth and do my talks and do my speeches, one of the biggest things that I'm trying to push is it's okay to talk. It's okay to be vulnerable. I stand up there and I tell them my life story. I tell them about the abuse I received at home and how scared I was as running around on the streets. Because ultimately, every single one of them is scared. Nobody carries a knife. Who carries a knife isn't scared because they're carrying a knife, aren't they? You know? So I guess get them to say that it's okay to speak out. The person who we need to look up to is the person that is speaking out, because they're the person who's doing the right thing.
Parents, don't you? Because parents have a big role in the responsibility here of ensuring that they know what their kids are up to.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, like, simple things. If you know that you've got knives in your home, then be accountable for the knives that are in your home, you know, whether that be lock them away in a cupboard or in a little safe in the house, stuff like that. We're not saying that sometimes children, like I say, they pick up that knife because they're scared. It's not because they're a bad child, or it's not because they want to go out and they want to hurt somebody. A lot of children live in areas in this country that are not very nice, and there's a lot of things that are going on outside, you know, and our children have to go outside and navigate their way through that, whether it's walking to school or going to the shop or going to a youth centre and stuff like that. There's, you know, so we need to protect our children. If we protect them,
and you do a great job in doing that, Mark, I have to say, with your organisation, Blinded Faith. Thank you so much for